So you own an RV and want to explore Glacier National Park. Who could blame you?
Glacier has some of the most picturesque mountains in the world. Wildlife, rivers, natural landscape that is so jaw-dropping, it looks almost fake. And the best part, you can drive your RV right through the middle of this nature wonderland.
However, if your plan is to RV Glacier without some serious planning, you may be shocked.
Closed roads, smoke, evacuations, undersized campgrounds, permits, so many permits.
You have to have a permit to buy a permit so that you can get permitted to the permit area.
I don't even know. It's so complicated.
Now, we've lived the RV life for 10 years. We've RV'd all 50 states. We've been to 51 national parks. And Glacier National Park, by far, is the most complicated national park we've ever RV'd.
But today we're going to help you navigate the complexity of this park because it is so worth it and should be at the top of your bucket list. Wow! And we'll show you some of our favorite stops along the way.
It's time to let go and get going. Okay, so we've been to Glacier National Park not once, not twice, but actually 3 different times in 3 different decades. So I went as a teenager with my family. We went tent camping. But honestly, if you went to Glacier, maybe 10, 20, 30 years ago and you're like, I don't need that. It has changed so much since I was a teenager. Back in the day, you could just roll up and you could we'll take that site over there. And then you go on hikes.
In 2017, we took our 30-foot Airstream and camped in Glacier. It wasn't as complicated, but we were starting to see they were making some changes as opposed to when Nathan went as a teen. And then it got even more complex when we showed up in 2024 in our 25-foot motorhome. That's when I think my mind wanted to it was smoking by the time I was done planning our Glacier experience.
So pretty much everything we're going to talk about has to do with 2024 and what we experienced in our motorhome.
If you do one thing in Glacier National Park, we highly recommend going to the Sun Road. This drive is spectacular, and it is probably one of our favorite drives we've ever done of all time. But there are many ways to do this road, and there are a little bit of hurdles to jump through as well.
Yeah, a little bit's putting it lightly, probably. Okay, first hurdle. It's a very short season to do this road because it's at a high elevation. You've got landslides.
It's at the Continental Divide.
Yeah.
It essentially goes through going to the Sun Road.
You've got avalanches, you've got wild animals, you've got road construction, and you've got the complexity of it's just this one road that the whole story behind how they built this is amazing if you ever want to watch that.
Cool.
But it's just this one road that's probably not ever going to be expanded or changed. And so you have all these limitations. And on top of that, this short season, because they don't typically open the road until early July-ish, and then they close the road in October. Now, I'll put on the
snow.
Yes, typically because of snow. You can go to the website, the National Park website, and you can see all the typical times that Logan Pass and Going to the Sun has opened and closed for decades. Just to get an idea of, on average, when does it open? We can't tell you exactly when it's going to open in 2025. It's year by year. You never know. And so to add to the complexity of the road itself, you've also got the smoke. Now, smoke will not cause the road to be closed, but really you're kind of doing yourself a disservice if you do Going to the Sun Road and it's just covered with smoke. The smoke could start coming in like late July, early August, or it may not come in almost at all, but most years it does come in at some point.
We were there in July and August, and we experienced smoke both times we were there. So it's just, but a week before we arrived, it was incredibly clear and beautiful. Definitely the earlier you can get in the season, the less likely you are to encounter the smoke, but the more likely you are to encounter the road not being open yet or the snow not melting. So it's finding that sweet spot, right?
So you've just got this little 4-week, 6-week gap-ish where you get the roads open and there's no smoke. And when I say smoky, it's wildfires. It could be wildfires within Glacier National Park, but it could also be wildfires as far north as Canada. What's also complicated is if you're RVing this national park, you can't just hook up your RV and drive it on Going to the Sun Road. Even dualies are technically, if it's a long bed dually, is going to be over the length restriction for this. So I'll put the restrictions on the screen. And
once you drive the road, you'll understand why.
Yeah.
Because what makes it so beautiful is also what makes it very complicated to navigate, because you've got these tight turns and
you got switchbacks
and these tunnels, tight tunnels. So you're like, oh.
There are definitely a lot of spots where if you have two vehicles that are larger, they're gonna like basically hold up traffic until one of them can back up and everybody's got to maneuver. It's a giant mess. So could you and should you are two different things, but technically that's why they have these restrictions. As you're probably thinking, well, how do I even get on this road? Well, there's 4 options. The first option, which I think is the best if you can do it. Maybe you have a motorhome with a Jeep behind you. Maybe you're towing with not a dually, but a single rear wheel truck. If you have your own vehicle and you can take it on this road, that is definitely the best way to take this drive. However, it's not as simple as just hopping in your vehicle and going. You start to get into the permit restrictions.
So because this road is so beautiful and popular and they limit the amount of vehicles on it per day, you have to have a permit, purchase a permit ahead of time to have access to drive the road. And so if you're taking your own vehicle, that is something you have to consider, is getting on the website, purchasing a ticket ahead of time. And some of them they release right before the day before as well.
But it's also complicated because you only need the permit if you're coming from the west side, which is the more popular side of the park. If you come from the east side, you don't need a permit. The second option, which is close to having your own vehicle, you can actually rent vehicles in the area as well. You can rent Jeeps and small, something that would be, to me, the best experience is if you could go and have like the top off or something like that.
There was lots of convertibles.
Convertibles, yes.
Yeah.
Third option, and I'll go in order of most flexibility to least flexibility. The third option with the next most amount of flexibility, I would say, would be to take the red bus. So the red bus, you've probably seen these pictures. It's considered the oldest fleet of vehicles, maybe in the world, at least the United States. But they're these old red dually-looking vehicles. And they have the top off, so it's pretty cool, but they do cost money. I think they have a few different tours ranging everywhere from like 60-something bucks to 120-something bucks. So it's cool that you get maybe a better experience than the last option, I'm going to say, but it does cost some money, and you do get to make some stops, but you still don't get to make stops whenever you want, like you would in your own vehicle or rental vehicle.
I would say one of the cool things about it is getting the history along the way. That's why a lot of times we love doing tours. So this is a great option if you don't feel comfortable driving the road. I know a lot of people, if you're scared of heights and you don't feel comfortable driving, because there are no guardrails. Like this is, this is a drop.
Another cool perk of the Red Bus Tours is that they will actually pick you up there's 2 private campgrounds, I think, that I know of. If there's more, obviously comment on any of this stuff if we're off. But I think there's a KOA, maybe the St. Mary KOA, and then Johnson's RV Park. If you have a big rig or you can't stay in the national park, you can stay at these private parks, and the Red Bus Tours will actually come to your RV park and pick you up. You can also meet the Red Bus at the visitor center, but if you're staying in the park, there's multiple places to meet up with the Red Bus, but it's cool that they could come to your campground and pick you up. The last option, which I think has the least amount of flexibility, but it is free, and this is what we got stuck doing because we couldn't get a rental vehicle in time. We had the 25-foot motorhome, so we couldn't take it on the road. Why didn't we do the Red Bus tour?
I mean, with our kids.
Our kids are not into tours, slow tours too much as we are. So
if it's in your budget, yeah. But again, we're like, let's take the free national park bus.
We showed up at the visitor center for the tour bus. It was like a weekday. We got there 30 minutes before the bus was supposed to be there.
Very first
bus of the day.
We're like, we're going to beat the crowds. We're going to get on the very first bus of the day.
And we were maybe not that far back, maybe 20 back, 30 back or something like that in line. We waited over an hour and a half and still we're not even on this bus yet. And we just gave up.
Our kids, waiting an hour and a half to take your kids on a 2-hour hike
hadn't even started.
They're like, we're not even on the bus yet. And so we're like, okay, we're just going to change the plan for today. The bus is a free option. It takes you through the park, but there is a lot of waiting, a lot of lines, and you just don't have that freedom and flexibility of loading up in your own vehicle at your own time. So I think you asked the question.
There's no stops along the way for the most part.
I think Nathan asked the question, hey, once we get there and we do the hike, how long will it be before they pick us back up? And he's like, well, it depends how many people are waiting in line. It can be another, couple hours.
Another day we went back, we did do the bus and experienced it and tried to time it with the crowds, and it was okay. But if you can do the first 2, maybe even the first 3 options we've given you, to us, the National Park bus is probably the last option. So the next hurdle we'll talk about has to do with permits. Now, we mentioned the permit you need to going to the Sun Road, but that's not the only permit you need. You also need a permit to get into Glacier National Park, which for a lot of you is not new news for a lot of national parks. However, you also need specific permits for even different areas of the national park.
So if I want to visit Abgar and St. Mary, I have to have 2 different permits.
I don't even know. It's so complicated.
Apparently you have to have a permit to buy a permit so that you can get permitted to the permit area. And then once you get there, you wait in line. Then you can get the permit to finally get to the boat that you need a permit for to ride out.
No, if you have a service, you don't have to have a permit.
Not only when Nathan says you need a permit to enter the park, you pay your national park fee to get in. That's different than a permit.
Yeah, it's not enough.
So you do have to either have a national park pass, which we love and highly recommend, or pay the fee to enter the park. But you also have to buy a separate permit because it is so over congested and crowded. They're just making sure these crowds are limited to a safe level.
Another area is North Fork. You need a permit for that area as well.
And you just purchase those permits on the National Park website.
So another hurdle when it comes to Glacier National Park, like a lot of national parks, your campgrounds for the most part do not accommodate massive rigs.
There's our A40, here's A39. It's almost the same deal. It's tight. You're coming in, not a ton of width. A33. This isn't even handicap accessible, which is typically an easy side to get in and out of. I'm curious what this is online. I'll put it on the screen when I look it up for A33. But look, this turn, I mean, it'd be tight. I mean, you're not even getting probably even a 30-foot RV would struggle to get in here.
Now, these are just rough numbers. I haven't done the exact calculations, but I would say if you are 25 feet or less, you're going to get into, 60, 70% of the sites. If you're 30 feet, you're probably only going to get into maybe like 30, 40% of the sites. If you're 40 feet, it's going to be like 10%, maybe 15% of the sites. And now if you're over 40 feet, at least on paper, yeah, you're not getting into anything in Glacier National Park.
There is no scenario where you're making all these turns and coming through here with something over, oh good grief, probably over 11 feet.
To get in and out of here with nothing touching your RV is pretty tough. It's just something to expect. It's something to be aware of. What it's like driving around just to get to the campsite, even if the campsite is a site that holds you. But there's a chance you could book a site, but know that the site could be pretty narrow. And especially if you have a slide, it could become more difficult and you may have to maneuver for a while to be able to get the slide out on the site you're supposed to be able to fit into. Because there ain't no how many slides you have or what's the full width, or at least that we've seen for Glacier National Park. You're rolling the dice just a little bit on the width.
But being able to camp in these national parks is where it's at, because your trails are so accessible. Instead of hopping on buses and waiting for forever, if you're able to just walk to the trails from these campsites, which we were able to do from Avalanche and Mini Glacier, and hop on these trails, it's incredible. And that's why they're so sought after, because you're just like in the middle of nature, so accessible.
Now, these campgrounds do not have, other than access to trails and being in the national park, which is awesome, like you're not going to get water, electric, sewer. There is a dump station in the area. So be ready for a rustic experience. I mean, be ready to, the smaller you get, the easier it's going to be to stay in these campgrounds.
We've stayed in 4 different campgrounds here in Glacier, and every single time it's not been super level. We've had to level out somehow with our site. So you should probably expect to be unlevel to some extent when you're coming in, if you bring an RV in here especially.
The good news is these are usually very roomy sites. All the campgrounds we stayed at, they have fire pits, picnic tables, and they're pretty spacious. I mean, we have somebody over here, kind of close to us. You can see the next one over here.
But overall, there's no complaints as far as the privacy compared to a private park when you come stay in one of these campsites.
The affordability of staying in the national park.
Yeah.
We camped at a private one outside of the national park, and the price tag was, what did we pay?
$150 a night. Yeah, it was nuts.
For a basic campground. And then being able to stay in the national park was like, what, $40? $40 a night, which is just, we'd take that any day. That was just so incredible.
Now, there's no cell signal in a lot of these as well. I'm not going to say all
Rustic.
of them. It was very rustic. And then you might be thinking, well, it's okay, I got Starlink. Well, good luck with the Starlink, because you're under tree cover for the most part. So our next hurdle when it comes to Glacier, and this one is tough. I can't just say, hey, this is when this is going to happen, so be ready. Closed roads.
The number one thing I recommend when planning any national park is checking the website for closures, because this can change day to day. Look at road closures, look at construction that's going to take place, because sometimes that will shut down entire areas, and that can affect your whole trip. Weather, animal activity. We had a whole area and hike closed down due to bear activity, and be very flexible and just be able to look at that ahead of time.
In 2017, when we were in Glacier, again, I talked about there was no cell signal, so we're staying at Apgar. And we could tell visibly the smoke was getting a little worse every day. And so we would go to the visitor center every day because we didn't have cell, and we would check and see, well, what's open, what's closed. And day one, they're like, oh, it's kind of smoky, and I think maybe they cut off maybe part of going to the Sun Road or something like that. Day two, we went and checked, and they'd cut off the top and maybe 2/3 of going to the Sun Road, and they're like, but everything's okay, there's no problem here.
Sprague fire. It's burning along the eastern side of Lake McDonald. It is about 500 acres tonight. It's nearly impossible for firefighters to get there on the ground.
Safe, everything's
They're
good.
safe, everything's fine. Day three, we went in and they'd shut down even like just beyond Abgar, some things like we could stand at the lake and see the smoke and even some of the fires. And they're like, it's okay. Day four, they're like, okay, our oldest chalet in the park just burned down.
42 guests at a West Glacier chalet evacuated quickly Friday on foot.
Glacier National Park loses one of its most historic structures. The iconic building had served travelers in Glacier's backcountry for more than a century.
But everything, everything's okay. You're totally safe.
The Sprague fire, which burned the Sperry Chalet and forced evacuations on the west side of Glacier, seeing more significant growth. It is now more than 13,000 acres.
It took us 3 or 4 days to catch on, and we're like, you know what? Yeah, I think we're out of here.
I don't know if it's under control. If
I don't think they control it as well as they say they are when their chalets are
they're burning
down.
Yeah, so we're like, we have the flexibility. We don't have to. We don't have to be here. We will return at a different time.
Okay, so that's a lot of the logistics and probably not Marissa's favorite part, because all she wants to talk about is how awesome this park is.
It is awesome.
We don't want to make it sound like we're trying to talk you out of this.
I'm talking them into it. I just want them to be prepared because literally I was very overwhelmed with the amount of complexity at Glacier.
So probably to Marissa's favorite part, like
the fun stuff.
The fun stuff.
Yes.
Like, what should you do? Like, what are your must-do? I say must-do because you gotta be flexible, but what if you could have a must-do and it's all gonna work out perfect? Like, what should people do when it comes to Glacier National Park?
Definitely going to the Sun Road is like, if you can't do anything else, take that drive. But there are so many great hikes if you can't get off the beaten path.
We'll start with, like, what should you do if you want to be adventurous and you can hike? Like, we'll say at least moderate distances and maybe you aren't afraid of heights too bad.
Our favorite adventurous hikes are, we loved, like, Highline Trail, which is right across from Hidden Lake. And you can...
on Logan Pass and going to the Sun Road, so up at the top.
And so if you're very adventurous, it's like you hold on to some cables and kind of walk along a little cliff. And our kids did the first little portion with us, and that was really fun. We also, I went with some friends and went and did Iceberg Lake, which was so cool. It was a beautiful hike. Got to see a bear along the way.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow.
I have been looking for somewhere to pee, and I literally almost peed my pants. It was just a really adventurous but beautiful hike, and there's also Grinnell Glacier.
If you're not as adventurous, there's still a lot of really beautiful views and things to do. Why are you walking like, JJ, no, no!
Oh, no, that's the only shoes we have.
JJ, why, dude?
Can you go get it? I have those walking machines. Oh, no, oh, no. It's gone. Oh my goodness, he got it.
If you can get to the mini glacier area, you can ride a boat onto the lake. You can see some really beautiful views. The lodge out there is just epic. It's so gorgeous. Lake McDonald, you can get out on the water. You can see the views there.
I loved Hidden Lake. We got to see all these mountain goats with just incredible scenery around. We also did Avalanche, and we could walk to Avalanche and Trail of Cedars was right there too as part of that. We could walk from our campsite and be on
You're
that
an
trail.
Avalanche campground, yeah. And that's a 2-for-1, so you can walk through the Trail of Cedars to Avalanche Trail and kind of get a twofer out of that. So we absolutely love Glacier National Park. Highly recommend it.
It's one of my favorites. It just speaks to my heart.
There's no other national park in the United States like Glacier National Park. There's just not. Now, another national park, it's in our neck of the woods, that's also not easy to get into, especially if you have a large RV, is Smoky Mountain National Park. Much like Glacier, there's a lot of wildlife, there's tons of things to do, but the roads are crowded, the campgrounds are small. But if you want to check that national park off of your journey list, check out this video. We've got some great tips there, and we highly recommend that national park as well.